So, welcome back. This is Sammy Hegab, and we'll just continue off where we left off. So, basically, now we've installed Eclipse and we've installed some of the plugins. We've played around a bit with the Eclipse Interactive Development Environment, short as IDE. What we're going to do in this lesson is we're going to take a dive into an introduction into Java. Just before we get started with Java, we're going to cover some basic syntax or concepts that are common pretty much in every language that's in existence today. The first lesson we'll be talking about the basic syntax, where we're going to use the semicolon, the backslash, how to make comments, just pretty much all the basic stuff out of the way. And we're going to talk about just briefly on basic building blocks in programming languages as well, and I've got that as basic concepts. We're going to write our first Java program, and don't worry if you're not familiar with what I'm going to be typing, because I will cover it as I progress in the course. We're going to compile the program, we're going to run it, we're going to see how it runs. We might mention a couple of things about how programs are compiled in Java bytecode and how it gets into the machine language later on. So we'll cover that as well. And in lesson 2, we'll just take a dive into creating a variable, what variables are, the type of variables. We'll start covering basic stuff like addition, subtractions, multiplications, just basic arithmetic operators, as well as assigning values into variables, and comparing like for like and comparing variable values, as well as we'll take a little introduction into conditions as well before we'll move on to the basic syntax and how to do if and while loops and all that stuff. Don't worry if you don't know what I'm talking about at this stage, because once I cover it, it will become much clearer as we progress. So let's just get started now. So now we've started up interactive development environment in Eclipse. So you should be now familiar with this screen. And what we're going to do, first of all, we're going to start with a new project, and this time is going to be a Java project. So I'm going to just click on Java project here. If you didn't see that, we'll do it again. There's new, and we select project from here, or there's an alternative. We can just say new, and then we can go for project from there. Yeah. So what we're going to do, we're going to start a Java project. We're going to give the project a name. In this case, we're going to say first project. You can call it anything you like. We're going to select the JRE that we're going to have. I've got a few here, and I'm going to leave it at the Java Standard Edition 10, so Java 10, and I'm going to say next, finish. So here it's just telling us that we're going to open a Java perspective. So we're going to use Java for now, and then later on we're going to cover the Enterprise Edition. So I'm going to say open perspective and say finish. So now I've got basically an empty project. There's nothing in the source. I'm going to right click on that, and it's going to give me more options. So I'm going to say new, and this time I'm going to say a Java class. I'll explain what a Java class is in a moment. This time what we're going to do, the first sort of Java program now, and this is going to be the first one. So what we're going to do, we're going to say first application or first app, and here it just makes our life a lot simpler. Is asking us if we'd like to create a public static void method, main method, which the application, when it's executed first time, it will look for that method and it will execute from that point. So whatever's in that method, it will start running that first. So I'm going to just say yes, create the public static method, and we'll cover that as we go along as well. And we'll say finish. Okay, so we've got pretty much our first shell application, and here we're just going to try some experiments. So we're going to cover the basic syntax. So as you can see, when it created the actual project, it added all these squiggly lines, the curly braces, and it created something called a class, my first app. which is exactly the same name as the file name as well. It's exactly the same name. And we have a method here, and we want to understand what all this stuff means, what this void means, static, public, main, string, arg. We want to understand what all this stuff means as well. But before we start understanding these things, we agreed in the beginning I was going to cover some basic syntax. So what I'm going to tell you first of all is there's something where when we create a statement in any program, so if we just delete all this stuff for the moment, let's just delete that to make it our life a lot simpler. So we got a plain blank canvas, and let's just say, for example, we wanted to print something on the screen. Now this is all pseudocode. This isn't Java, this is just pseudocode, which is just me writing just in plain English, so at least you can understand how things work. So let's just say I wanted to print something on the screen, and I said print hello. What would happen is every time we do a statement in Java and other languages as well, like C and C++ and C# and all the other languages, we end it with a semicolon. Now if you don't have a semicolon, the program won't know it's the end of the statement, so it will just carry on to the next line in the program, and then it will create a syntax error. So you must remember that whenever you do any statement like printing or doing any sort of command, you need to end it with a semicolon. Now there are some exceptions in the case of if we were doing some condition, if we want to check if something is true. So if I said if age is greater than 18, then print something. So let's just say this was the statement. As you can see here, this is the whole statement. Now if, for example, the condition would execute a number of statements, what I'll do after the condition, is I'll wrap it with a curly brace. So hypothetically, if I wanted to do a number of things like print this, do that, do also. So if I did a number of statements, I can put next to each statement a semicolon as such, and we've wrapped it with a curly brace. So this will basically be our code block. So this will be the code block that's contained, it's wrapped inside that condition age is greater than 18, and it will execute that. And then we can also say else do something else. So we can also do a number of different statements as such, and each one must end with a semicolon. So in this case we've got an idea of the semicolon to end the statement, and we've got an idea of the curly brace as well. Now if we wanted to do a comment of some sort of what this condition does, what we can do, we've got two ways of doing comments in Java and also in other languages. So either we do two backslashes and say this condition, I can't type very much, this I've got a new keyboard, so I'm just typing checks age, for example. So this will be just one line condition, but if I wanted to create a multiple line condition, I would use this. I would do a backslash and a star, and it will automatically open a multi-line comment box. So this could be a way for me to write something in a multiple line, instead of just every time if I wanted to do multiple lines I would have to keep doing this. So this is the one line comment. So to avoid doing that, I can just open up a multi-line comment. So now we've got pretty much an idea of what comments are and how to write comments. Comments are not being compiled in the program. This is just for the developers to understand what's going on. So every time you write a piece of code, you can leave some comments for other developers to read and get an understanding exactly what your code does. So in this case now we're just going to delete all this, and we're going to return back to our first app. Now our first app, what it's going to do is basically is going to print hello world, which is the very first program. Now how do you write that in Java? Well, we use something called system, because it's a system command or method. So we're going to have to access the system class, and out is the next thing, and you can see that we got IntelliSense, which basically gives us some hints of what we can do. In this case we're going to say out, and we're going to say print line. We can then, every method has a like a bracket. So what we're going to do, we're going to provide it with a string. So in this case I'm going to say hello world and this will just print the word hello world. Now let's say I wanted it to print a name of some sort or something else. I can either include it within this quotes, or I can add it concatenate. So the plus sign, if you're adding strings together, you're concatenating two strings. So I can actually concatenate two strings together using the plus sign. So in this case, I'm going to put hello, and then I'm going to concatenate it with the word world, and we're going to run the application. Now this is a very simple, very basic program. It doesn't do very much other than print on the screen hello world. So as you can see, it looks pretty messy now, since there's no indentation, we're not indenting that line and so on. So the best way to do this, to tidy up things, we can right click and we can look for source and then format, or alternatively we could just go to the menu, click source and then format, and as you can see, it tidied up the screen a bit. So all I have to do now is just basically save the program and then run it. There's run as. So I can just say run as, and I can say Java application, since it is only a Java application. It's not a website or anything. It's just a simple console application that would run on the command line. So if I click on that, and let's see if the program would run. As you can see, it printed hello world, and it exited, didn't do anything else, and it ended. The application just ended. Okay, so let's just quickly review. Now there's a couple of things to note here. Programs in Java are classes. Okay, so as you can see, we said public class. Public means it's accessible. This is the accessibility. It can be accessed, so it has to be public. It's not private, and it's not hidden, so it's accessible by other classes, other programs in or other components in the actual application. So that's why it's public. And the word class lets us know that it's the class, which is the actual program name. And here you have to note that Java is case sensitive. So if I wrote M with a small m, it will be entirely a different program altogether. So the name is case sensitive, and likewise the name of the file and the name of the actual application here has to be identical. It can't be any different. So if I wrote small m, you can see that it threw an error straight away, and it said public type my first app must be defined in its own file. So in this case, I'm just going to right click and I'm going to say rename to my first app. So it would rename it back, and that's it. It's done. If I save like so, it's all finished. So Java programs are saved with their exact program name, and the extension of the file is .java. Once it's compiled into Java bytecode, which is a middle language between the English syntax that we're using here and the Java bytecode, which is halfway in between to machine language, and it's only executed on a Java virtual machine, which then basically depending on what machine you're using, if you're using a Mac, it will then interpret it into the Macintosh or the Apple machine language. If it's a PC, then it will also interpret that. If it's on Linux, it will then interpret it into the Linux machine language as well. So it's a middle tier language in between our readable language, which is the English language, human readable, and the machine language, which is all in binaries, which is zeros and ones. Okay, so that's all clear now, I believe. Now the program container, okay, so this what we'll call as a container. So it's contained here, the class, and you can see the curly brace here, and this is the program. It's contained within these two brackets. And we also covered the public static void main, and we said this is the main sort of starting point in pretty much all Java programs, with exceptions of course when we start looking into web development and apps and other stuff. There'll be a different way of creating a starting point in the application, but we'll look into that once we reach that point in the course. So I hope this is clear so far, and the only statement we have in this application is just print on the screen hello world. And here we've used that statement block system.out.println, which prints the line hello world. We can expand on this program, and we'll probably do that in the next lesson when we start looking into creating variables and arithmetic operators and so on, like I first mentioned in the introduction to this lesson. So I hope this is clear, and we're going to end this video now, and we'll continue in the next video creating variables and variable data types. Thank you very much for watching.